Hello, this is Lora O'Brien, founder and primary educator at the Ogham Academy. So today we're going to look at what is Ogham and how is it used. So Ogham remains a somewhat mysterious Celtic writing script to this very day. It was created in ancient Ireland, most probably during the 4th century Common Era, and based upon the oldest known version of the Irish language, Primitive Irish. Our earliest examples of the script are found carved into Ogham stones. These inscribed stone slabs were used by Gaelic Irish tribes to record our history. You can see an example of one of those on the screen where the Ogham is carved along the edge of the stone. Ogham is a unique system of notches and lines used to represent the sounds of the primitive Irish tongue. It is a written alphabet, not a language in its own right, which is an important distinction. So we're going to learn more about Ogham and discover why it's becoming more popular today. But to do that, we are going to put a copy of the Ogham cheat sheet here on screen. So this is a free cheat sheet that you can get from the Ogham Academy. You can go to ogham.academy/cheat-sheet. And you can get that. I will link below to all of that. But we are going to have a look at the cheat sheet as we go through the information. So Ogham, a mysterious Celtic writing system. Although we have some dedicated modern scholars researching the Ogham now, particularly with regard to the archaeology and linguistics, there are many research questions which still remain unanswered, and much misinformation within the public realm, which doesn't help in our understanding of the Ogham at all. Some will even claim that Ogham did not originate in Ireland, though academic experts seem to have settled that question to their own satisfaction. For example, contemporary researchers David Stifter and Nora White. As the primary evidence we have for the original forms of Ogham is still the orthodox inscriptions in stone, there remains some debate over the exact age of the writing system, given that stone cannot be carbon dated. All dating evidence we have, therefore, is contextual and linguistic. Ogham writing may well predate the current evidence of the late 300s BCE, before Common Era, but there is no way to tell this for sure. Given that the inventors of Ogham seem to have been familiar with the Latin alphabet as well as primitive Irish, it seems most likely that Ogham was invented by early Christian missionaries in Ireland. They may have needed a unique alphabet system for writing short messages and inscription in the primitive Irish language and later on in Old Irish. When asked the question, what is Ogham and how is it used? These early adopters, if not inventors, from the golden age of Celtic Christianity, deserve our acknowledgement and our respect. We're going to look at the legendary origins of the Ogham. If we don't know for sure from an archaeological perspective, what are the legends and stories that are told about the origins of the Ogham? So while the exact origins of the Ogham writing system are unknown, and even the name itself remains a puzzle, much has been written on the topic over many centuries. It has been claimed that the name Ogham comes from the Old Irish ua, or the Old Irish version of it would be uag, meaning grave, but this is doubtful. McManus suggests a possible etymology which is more likely, that Ogham derives from the Irish og uam, meaning point seam, referring to the seam made by the point of a sharp weapon, as it was inscribed on stone. Invention of the Ogham script was traditionally ascribed to Oma mac Elathan, and in the 7th century manuscript of Orakhept Nanekis, the scholar's primer, it says, Oma was the inventor of Ogham. Its efficient cause is hand or knife. It was written that Oma, a god of the Tuatha Dé Danann, created the first Ogham alphabet while carving out the first Ogham staves for magical use. Oma was skilled at speech and poetry, and the Ogham tract within the manuscript records that his alphabet was designed specifically for the educated, excluding, quote, rustics and fools. This, however, is likely to be more a reflection of the elitism of medieval Christian scribes than of Ogham himself. According to another medieval legend, Ogham was created during the biblical Tower of Babel, being discovered or compiled and taught to humans by the mythical Scythian king Phineas Farsa. In this tale, Phineas journeyed from Scythia to study the confused languages at Nimrod's Tower, or the Tower of Babel. The Gaelic scholars who travelled with him left and sought out the scattered languages, while Phineas remained at the tower to work. After 10 years they returned, and Phineas was able to create the selected language in a couple of different versions from the best parts of all the confused tongues. He named it Gaelic for his friend and colleague, Gael mac Ethator. The story goes that he also created the Beth Lewis Nin, the Ogham, as a perfected writing system for his languages, and dedicated each of the letter names to his 25 best Gaelic scholars. Now, looking at the Ogham alphabet itself, we see the Fetha, which is the Ogham letter names themselves, are known collectively as the Beth Lewis Nin, after the letter names of the first two and last letters in the first grouping. This is similar to the way the modern Latin alphabet is named for the first and last Greek letter names, alpha and beta. As evidence for its earliest known use, we have Orthodox inscriptions dating from approximately the 5th to 7th centuries Common Era. On these we see 4 groups of 5 letters each, to a total of 20 letters. These groups are called the acme, or singular acma. So on your Ogham cheat sheet, what you will find is the first acma, the second acma, the third acma, and the fourth acma. When seen on stone, the Fetha, or singular fi, which are the letter names, are made up of between 1 and 5 horizontal strokes or lines placed relative to a stem line called the drim, which usually runs vertical on the stone. So you have a vertical line that's going up, and you have lines of between 1 and 5 coming out from this vertical stem line. Again, this will be much clearer when you have your Ogham cheat sheet in front of you and you can go through it again. The first and second acma, this one and this one, are distinguished by their orientation to the stem line. The first is facing right and the second is facing left. The third group has lines which cross the stem line at an angle, so diagonally across that central stem line. And the fourth group, representing the vowels, has 1 to 5 scores or notches on the stem line, and they go straight across. Now, it says scores or notches. Sometimes you will see the vowels written as like a dot or a notch along the stem line rather than a horizontal line, as we see in the cheat sheet. Either way is perfectly fine. In this vertical recording of Ogham, it is read from bottom to top as a tree is climbed. These Orthodox inscriptions were usually carved along the edges of the stones, but we do have some instances where a stem line was drawn onto the stone face. Words generally begin at the bottom left-hand corner of the stone and move up, across the top, and then down the right-hand edge if required. There was a fifth group of 5 to 6 supplementary letter names, which are called the forefeather or extra letters, added to the later manuscript sources which taught and used the Ogham. In the later Orthodox descriptions, however, only the first of these shows up with any frequency of use. It is marked by 2 diagonal scores crossing each other on the stem line in an X-shaped letter. So I believe this one would be. So these are the 4 feather, and then this is the one that shows up in the older Orthodox Ogham inscriptions, and the rest then come from the manuscript tradition. Ogham stones. There are roughly 400 known Ogham monumental inscriptions which exist in Ireland, but there are also remaining examples in Wales, Devon, Cornwall and elsewhere in England, the Isle of Man and Scotland, bringing the total to around 500. The tradition may have been carried abroad by Gaelic settlers. Though there are many examples in Scotland which feature Pictish inscriptions, these may be indications of a scholastic tradition, as in the Irish examples below. Prior to the classical Ogham stone inscriptions that were being carved primarily through the 5th, 6th and 7th centuries Common Era, we can theorise that there may have been a period of carving into wood or metal which has not survived the way Ogham stones have. In Ireland, Ogham stones have been found in every county. However, they're most commonly seen in the southwest of the island, in counties Kerry, Cork and Waterford, which is where the Ogham Academy is based, by the way, County Waterford. The densest cluster is in the barony of Corcadivna, on the Dingle Peninsula, in County Kerry. We know of about 60 Ogham stones that originated there, many of which seem to be territorial markers. When we consider what Ogham was used for, the stones feature strongly. The Orthodox inscriptions on stone recorded the personal names of individuals, often beside their parentage, grandparentage, or their tribal connections. Sometimes we can even see that what may be more ancient or aspirational connections to mythical beings, such as the god Lu. Inscriptions vary between using Primitive Irish, Old Irish, and the Latin alphabet. Each Ogham stone may have served as a memorial or boundary marker, as well as indicators of land ownership. There is even record in later legal texts that a land claim isn't valid without an Ogham stone stating the right. We genuinely don't know much of, or how much of a part Ogham played in the spiritual, magical, memorial, or actual burial activities of those who carved these seemingly sepulchral inscriptions. So how was it used? Besides the recording of personal names from the 4th century onwards, the later texts in manuscript sources which provide us most insight into the use of Ogham are Oracept Nanechus, the Scholar's Primer, and In Laur Ogham, the Ogham Tract. These works supply a key to the alphabet where all of the letter names are translated into tree names, among other lists of associations. Now, just a point there, not all of the letter names have a direct meaning of a tree name. That is a common misconception. But we do have lists where they have tree or plant names associated with them. Early scholars took the meaning of the letter names literally, leading them to believe that the Ogham script was based solely on the name of the tree form which each letter originated. Thanks to the work of Damien McManus and other modern scholars, we now have a much clearer understanding. Early Irish sagas and legends suggest that Oghams were used for short message exchanges on wooden or metal objects. Some of these references seem to be deliberately obscure or cryptic in their meaning, while others may contain bardic or folk memories of genuine magical use. So we do have a written tradition of magical or spiritual meanings associated with the Ogham, but again, we can't prove that with archaeology, unfortunately. There is some indication that Ogham was once employed for keeping records or inventories, such as genealogical records or numerical tallies of property ownership. There has also been suggestion that Ogham was used as a way of communicating by using fingers or hands, but this is tenuous at best. We know for sure that Ogham was used primarily to write the primitive Irish language in the Orthodox monumental stone inscriptions during the 4th to 6th centuries Common Era, and later when primitive Irish developed into the Old Irish language in the Scholastic Ogham, mostly during the 7th to 9th centuries Common Era. The term scholastic, cited above, is used to describe later medieval inscriptions which were most likely inspired by the manuscript sources, rather than representing an unbroken line of use dating from the original monument tradition. So these examples are named for what is more likely to have represented a scholarly study of the earlier manuscript tradition and even the Ogham stones themselves. Unlike Orthodox Ogham, so that on the stones, many of the medieval inscriptions record 5 or even 6 forfeather, those supplementary letter names mentioned earlier. It is the scholastic inscriptions which were most likely to be carved on stems cut into the faces of the stones rather than along their edges, as we saw in the older versions. Right down to the 16th century, we have examples of Ogham in marginalia and notes in manuscript sources. On a gravestone from 1802, found in County Tipperary here in Ireland, there is a more modern example of a sepulchral inscription using the Ogham. So how is it used today? Reducing the Ogham to mere tree association is a curse. Robert Graves has a lot to answer for when it comes to misunderstanding and misrepresentation of the Ogham and tree folklore in general. His book, The White Goddess, has heavily influenced New Age and neo-pagan approaches to Ogham, though he has long been academically discredited. In turn, his work was largely drawn from the theories of Irish antiquarian archaeologist, or A.S. McAllister, though Graves went far beyond McAllister's original scholarship. He took a lot of license now, in fairness. McAllister's fairly sound, few flights of fancy, but Graves there's no saving anything written by Graves, to be honest. Quite simply, Robert Graves fictionalized the folklore. He made up a lot of stuff about the Middle East in Stone Age times, moon goddess traditions, ancient Egyptians, and all sorts, eventually highlighting tree associations surrounding Ogham to the exclusion of any other lists of associations, of which there are many. As I said, there is a tree list association, but there are many, many other association lists. He proposed that the tree folklore and the order of the Ogham letter names formed an ancient seasonal calendar of tree magic. And serious modern scholars, especially those who view the Ogham as a potential source for spiritual, magical, or divinatory connection, have been dealing with the fallout from that misinformation ever since. Ask me how I know. Just ask me. Many of the letter names do have a correlation with tree names. This is a given. There is even some tree folklore and tree associations woven through these manuscript traditions when you read the original medieval Brithar Ogham or poetic kennings. However, it does not constitute enough of a focus to warrant the exclusion of all else the Ogham is or may have been. For an example of quality contemporary pagan scholarship on the Ogham, which incorporates information on the spiritual, the magical, and divination using the Ogham, we do recommend Erin Rowan Laurie's book, Ogham Weaving Word Wisdom, which I will link below. We honestly cannot recommend many other neo-pagan books on the Ogham, if any. If anyone tries to sell you any Celtic tree association or a calendar of tree magic nonsense, please just leave it where it is, okay? So I will include below more online resources for learning Ogham. You can just click through the blog post, I will link it, and you can have all of those resources that are available for online resources for learning Ogham. So hopefully that has been useful to you. And if it has, like I said, you need to go and get the cheat sheet, which you can get from ogham.academy/cheat-sheet. And that is the Ogham alphabet at a glance cheat sheet. So that's the one that we were looking at earlier on. But you can also get a quick reference guide. So a quick reference guide to Ogham, compiled by myself at the Ogham Academy. And in this guide, we have a brief history of the Ogham. We have a timeline of the Irish language and Ogham. And then we have not only the letters that you'll find in the cheat sheet, but also an initial divinatory meaning and space for you to write your own kennings in there. And just having it all together on those pages is actually very useful. Okay, so to get that, you would go to ogham.academy/guide, and that will be your Ogham quick and easy reference guide, a free PDF download. These are printable guided sheets, and you'll get, as I said, the quick history of Ogham, the Ogham letters laid out across 2 A4 sheets for easy printing and quick reference or reminders. So you just enter your first name and your email and then click Get Your Guide, and we will be able to send you your guide by email so that you can download it. We won't send spam, you can unsubscribe anytime, and we will send you some other Ogham resources as well. So you get quality information right to your inbox. So all of this has been a blog post at the Ogham Academy blog. What is Ogham and how is it used? And this is myself, Lora O'Brien, signing off. Hopefully that has been useful to you. And don't forget to check below for links and get your free stuff.